which are not happening because Sinn Féin are saying they refuse to have an executive
Conor
meeting.
Murphy,
That's
your
the key
party
issue.
is saying that you won't march to a unionist tune in terms of an agenda for the executive. But here, as Nigel Dodds is saying, there are all sorts of issues that people are happy to talk about, all the other parties are happy to talk about, which can in no way be construed as being a unionist agenda. You're just writing those off.
Well, we want to talk about all of the issues. And we want an agreed agenda for an executive, and that's what we've been asking for. We have been talking about a range of issues for the last number of months, but we've been talking around in circles and going nowhere with some of the key issues. And you do talk about the obligations that came out of St Andrews. I mean, we knew what our obligations were, and we delivered on those. We went back to our own party, we took a decision on policing, we went to our own community, we sought support, we secured support for that decision, and we have honoured that decision and honoured our obligation under St Andrews. The DUP had obligations as well under St Andrews. They came out and described, Ian Paisley described it at the event as a good day for Ireland. The DUP said it was a better deal for unionism. And yet there are obligations that flow from that. We have lived up to ours. We want to secure an executive meeting which deals with the outstanding issues.
Well, what about the offer of an open agenda? What could be wrong with that?
We've been speaking on an open agenda. I mean, the purpose of an executive meeting is to bring papers which are agreed so that we can decide how we move forward. We have been speaking on an open agenda to the DUP for months now about these issues, but we've been speaking round and round in circles.
But not at executive level. What's wrong with an open agenda for an executive meeting? You can raise any point you want.
Yes, you can raise any point you want at the executive, and we have facilities for any other business executive where people can raise points they want. What we want is agreement on these issues. This executive isn't Limavady Borough Council. This is a different set of ground rules. Issues have to be agreed. They have to be brought before the executive, agreed between the two principal parties and the other parties to the executive, and decisions taken on how to move forward. That's what we're expected to do. That was part of the new landscape following St Andrews, and we have lived up to our side of our obligations in that. And we want
so the offer of an open agenda is a meaningless offer.
Well, no. I mean, I think this is where people really do begin to get completely bamboozled by Sinn Féin's position, which changes every time they speak. They talked about the need to have an agenda in which items of concern to them would be on the table. So Peter Robinson has said, well, if there's issues about getting that on, concerns about that, let's take away that concern and have an open agenda. Now we're being told, no, we have to have things agreed before it goes to the executive. Now, surely my understanding about this was that Sinn Féin believed in an inclusive process. I'm not in the business of excluding the Ulster Unionists or the SDLP. The executive table is the place where we have agreed decisions. But we're not going to get together with Sinn Féin beforehand and agree at all.
No,
we can agree what the topics are for discussion.
Nigel Dodds, about having a paper that you're submitting to the executive that you can't about all sorts of issues affecting people's poverty. But you have a paper. There is no paper in existence on the issue of devolved policing. That's what Conor Murphy needs.
No, but the issue of, I mean, I have an allocation that I could make of tens of millions of pounds from housing to health, from environment to education, from infrastructure to agriculture, dealing with fuel poverty action plan and so on and so forth. Conor Murphy and his colleagues are saying that cannot be allowed to go forward. People are crying out for investment in these areas. We can do it. But Conor Murphy is holding it up on the basis that he needs something on an issue which isn't within the remit of the Assembly. I'm saying, of course, we can discuss these issues, but you shouldn't hold up the business of the executive for that reason. Now, the second thing that Conor Murphy mentioned there was this idea of obligations under St Andrews. He knows, and the governments know, that the DUP never agreed to any details or in terms of timetable for devolution of policing and justice. And indeed, all the discussions thereafter from St Andrews spelt that out clearly. Indeed, Ian Paisley made that clear on the day that that agreement was made between the two governments. So this is a nonsense argument about the
St
DUP
Andrews
having
did
broken
say
obligations.
that the governments believed the implementation of that agreement would create the confidence for all this to happen. And you agreed to that overall package. So you agreed that that was the case.
The governments made that assessment. That was their view, and they can make whatever assessment they like. They know, Conor Murphy knows, the people know that we made no obligations in terms of timetable for devolution of policing and justice. It can only happen when there's confidence in the community. And rather than hold up the business that needs to be dealt with, I mean, Martin McGuinness has already agreed that there are 12 papers for the Assembly, not for the benefit of unionists, by the way. There seems to be this idea that this is all about things going forward that are only for unionists. Investment in education, the environment, housing, health is for everybody in Northern Ireland. That's what's been held up by Sinn Féin.
So answer the accusation that you're being deeply irresponsible, as Nigel Dodds has said in a statement today. today by avoiding all these issues?
In the first instance, if Nigel's paper on allocating monies to all the departments could be cleared by written procedure if he wished to do that. He didn't submit the paper in that fashion. He submitted a paper to the executive. So if it is urgent, if it is urgent, there is a method to do it. Secondly, if they were so keen on giving a shot in the arm to the local economy, they've been kicking around the May Stadium issue for 16 months within the DUP, could create thousands of jobs, secure millions of pounds worth of investment, and yet it hasn't come out of their party squabble in relation to
but
it.
If that
so
could
we
have
are,
happened
we
by
are.
written
Sorry,
procedure, what is the problem with having it in meeting?
We have procedures
What's the problem with doing it in a meeting? If you agree that it can be done in writing, why not have a meeting at which these matters could be discussed?
Yes, and why not have a meeting in which all of the outstanding issues that we're trying to deal with, including policing and justice,
we have offered an open agenda.
Can be resolved.
We have opened an open agenda.
No, I know, but we've been talking on an open agenda for the last 6 months, round and round.
So
in
what
circles,
about an open agenda meeting of the executive?
Sorry, can I finish the point? With the DUP avoiding the issues that they need to face.
Let's have an executive meeting tomorrow at which we table all the issues.
This is about a partnership government. It's about ensuring that the issues which are important to us and the issues which are important to you and the other parties that make up the executive are dealt with in an inclusive fashion. It's not about sorting out the issues that the DUP are considered are important to them at any particular issue. It's about resolving all of the issues.
There has been a lot of crocodile tears. Let me just correct, gentlemen, if we all talk together, no one will hear anything. Let's make it clear that this... No, I'm not going to let you finish it, because you tried to make the point that it's issues of interest to the DUP. There are issues of interest to everyone in this community, in that list of 12 agreed papers and in the paper which Nigel Dodds has been talking about.
And there are a range of issues that are of interest to all of the community that we can't get dealing with. We can't get dealing with the issue of education. We can't get the DUP to respond positively or even in an appropriate fashion to the proposition being put forward by the Minister for Education. We can't get the rights of Irish language speakers dealt with in an appropriate fashion by the DUP. We can't get an issue around which would give a shot in the arm to the economy around the Mayo Stadium dealt with by the DUP. And we can't get the issue of policing and justice, which is a key issue for right across the community, not just for Republican supporters, a key issue for unionists and loyalists and people who are affected by antisocial behaviour and all of the ravages of crime day and daily. We can't get those issues dealt with because the DUP just want to talk about them. They don't want to resolve any of those issues. And the executive will only work where we have a partnership arrangement, where we have respect for each other, that we decide to deal with the issues that are important to each other. We are quite prepared to deal with the issues that the DUP want, but these issues need to be resolved, and they need to be resolved in a timely fashion.
The point is, you could, and we well know this, we've done it for generations in Northern Ireland, talk forever about specific issues. Decisions need to be taken. Now, you have said, your party has said, and you've made the point again today, that it's all about public confidence. When do you think you would be able to say there was public confidence in the devolution of policing?
Now we're dealing with the issue of policing, which is outside the remit of the Assembly and the Executive. But I will come on to that point. Yes, and I'll come on to that point. But let me just deal with this point about the Executive and so on. It appears now that the party that talks about partnership, the party that talks about inclusivity, wants to try to get to a position where they want the DUP and themselves to make all these agreements and then use the Executive as some kind of rubber stamp and exclude everybody else. That's not the business we're in. We believe this is a partnership in the sense that the Executive is the place. There are 4 parties at the Executive table. We have offered an open agenda. So all this talk about that there's issues only for unionists and so on.
We've kind of discussed
on the issue of policing and justice. This is a matter that was raised previously in discussions. We came out of the St Andrews talks with an agreement between 2 governments. Sinn Féin may have made commitments and obligations to people. That is a matter for them. They know they had no obligation from us on this issue. And we have made it clear that outside there in the community, people are not running around saying the most important thing is to have a date for the devolution of policing and justice. They want the Executive to deal with the issues that are important.
Why don't you just get on with it?
If
people out there don't care about it, why don't you just get on with it?
No, I mean, the point about it is they are not wanting us to put that above the other issues of concern because they don't regard it as an important issue to set a date for the devolution of policing and justice. That is not a matter of primary concern. I defy you to say that anyone that you meet is raising that as an issue.
But it is for one of the parties, at least one of the parties that is party to this whole agreement. You seem to be, in their view, ignoring that requirement.
Well, the days of Sinn Féin being able to dictate the agenda and hold governments to ransom are over. They are now dealing in a system that they agreed to go into with the rules as set, and that is what they have to live with. And if they choose not to abide by those democratic rules, that's a matter for them.
Can I say
you just mismanaged the whole process?
No,
basically.
not at all. Can I say we are trying to establish whether we have a genuine partnership at the heart of government? And that's the only way this arrangement will work, is if there's a genuine partnership. Now, if the DUP aren't up for that partnership, that is, I think, a very disappointing day for all of us. But we are trying to establish whether we have a genuine, not a Limavady Borough Council relationship, but a genuine partnership at the heart of government.
Come to the executive
This one will resolve itself, I'm sure, eventually. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.